Well. Tracy Phillips,
Womanport.
welcome to December 23rd, EP 20.
Yeah, welcome, my friend. Here we are. Like, wow, we just kind of nicked it just before the holidays, right? I like that we could sneak up right on there and not have to, put it off to the next week.
Correct. Oh, in fact, I don't know if it had come on a week where we'll still be here.
Right. Well, we might have to. In fact, you and I need to talk about that because I have one where I'm going to be traveling, I think, and I don't know how well I can do this on the road. I mean, I'm not going to be driving. I wouldn't even attempt it, but I mean, still, we might have to do some finagling. So just heads up down the road, folks. Beginning of January, we might have to move one around.
We'll work it. You know what I wanted to do today? I just wanted to go in the backyard, but it's kind of cold. It's just a different scenery. Can't go in a tank top, a hat on my face, and just relax because it's how I'm feeling today. Nothing's gonna steal my joy.
I love
Now
that.
or even future, because I see something new in front of your face. Huh.
You see my little friend here?
I see a little friend. Say hello to my little friend.
My little friend. Yes. So I'm going big, folks. I have a big microphone, therefore. I have no more excuse. Either that or I'm hiding behind my. No, I can't hide behind it. It doesn't really work that way. But yeah, I was telling everyone, I was telling Wilwyn the story about it. It was really funny. This is supposed to be my, one of my Christmas gifts for my husband. And you don't think oftentimes when you're ordering stuff how it's going to arrive. And it didn't arrive in an additional box. It just arrived in the box with the picture of the microphone on the front. And of course, the person home to receive the box was me. And, to the point of, I think I was telling the story of when my husband proposed to me and I totally didn't get it. Like I was like, what's happening? What's going right? Clueless. Same thing. Like it didn't occur to me that the only one in this household that has any use for something like this is me. And I was thinking, I wonder if he'll let me borrow it for my eavesdrop. So I said to him and he handed it to me and told me Merry Christmas.
On that note, Verlin was leaving the house today. And so I don't know, I've been trimming the house up, just putting wood trim on the walls and, batten boards, etc.
Mm-hmm.
And she's leaving the house and she says, I'm expecting a box from this store. Don't open it. I'm like, okay, ma'am. Because it's the season where things come. If your name's on it, you open and say, well, mine. Oh, I'm sorry. Like I went, she ordered something for herself, and it was Woolwyn-Port. And I go, Woolwyn-Port, and I'm just ripping it because I think she used my Prime, and I'm like, I didn't buy anything. And then she's looking at me on her desk, just looking at me, and then I go, makeup. She goes, that's mine. I'm like, oh, hey, have it.
Oh my gosh, that's so great. Yeah, sorry. It's like when our kids are little, it's like my daughter, she used to just like to open the gifts. It didn't matter who they were for, and we had, have to teach them early on that just because the gifts are under the tree doesn't mean you just get to open any one of them. But every once in a while you're just like, oh yeah, okay, let them have their fun and open it.
Gotcha.
Yeah, but it's that kind of thing where it's just like, I hope you had fun opening that gift.
What's on your mind, sis? What's good? What's on your mind?
Gratitude is on my mind. I mean, to be honest, I really feel like, I know that this is oftentimes a time when we slow down enough to think about those things. And, not so much this year, but in the, usually we're with lots of friends and family, and that kind of reminds us of what we're grateful for and that kind of thing. But it really is gratitude. I mean, I was telling you before, you're asking me how I was doing, last night I was starting to be like, do the uh-ohs. I had just, a killer headache and was starting to feel like I was going downhill. And, that's the blessing of a good night's sleep. I'll tell you what, because I woke up this morning, bink, I'm back to my normal self. But I really have to, sometimes we're grateful for that. Oh gosh, I'm not feeling ill.
Yeah.
But I was really grateful for my body today, having that kind of immune system, I mean, I put a lot into taking care of myself, and I'm grateful for that too. And I think
Wow.
sometimes we really do need to stop and think about ourselves. It's not selfish to think about what we're doing for ourselves and being grateful for that,
Wow.
because if anything, that's how we teach others how to do the same. It's not through just, oh, what can I do to show others to take care
Mm.
of themselves, or how can I nourish and support and nurture others. Really the only way we can teach others how to do that legitimately is when we're doing that for ourselves. So yeah, so I
How
think that's what I'm feeling grateful for.
how do you take care of yourself? When you said, you're grateful for your body, how do you take care of yourself?
Yeah, so I mean, I grew up, I always tell a story of, I was fortunate enough to grow up in a family where it was just something that was done. It was a lifestyle, coming
Mhm.
from Colorado, it was the outdoorsy lifestyle that, so it's all that kind of thinking about what's good for your body, and as far as exercise, but also just what you eat and who you spend time with and all that. I don't think it was any taught to me like through words as much as it was taught to me through modeling.
Mm.
And so then when I left Colorado for the first time to go to, college, undergrad, and I went into a different environment, and then continued to, move around in various places that were different, I started to really recognize how that was not the same everywhere,
Mm.
right? Like we leave home and it's like, oh,
Yep.
not everybody lives this way. And I was kind of in undergrad, I was seen as that go-to person on, how do you do this? How to do that? Which ironically is funny because I probably gained more weight. I think I gained more weight in undergrad, the freshman 15, that I think for
Uh-huh.
me kind of extended to the, undergrad 20. Um, but even so, I was always, losing it quickly. And so people were
Gotcha.
just like, how do you do that? I'm like, I just get back on track. Like, you can
Mhm.
only eat fluff and nutter sandwiches or whatever those things are called with the peanut butter and the fluff. Have you ever heard
Uh,
of that?
no.
Okay, I hadn't either. And this is so for folks who don't know, like I went to Providence College in Rhode Island for undergrad. And so the East Coast, obviously they do things a little bit differently. And I was introduced to this, I think it's called the fluff and nutter, if I remember correctly.
Okay.
And it was freshman year. We're in the, the mess hall kind of thing. And people were going through the line, and people were like, oh, they don't want to eat whatever. It wasn't good what they were serving for dinner. And so at the end, there were options, peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, that kind of thing. And there's this huge container of fluff. And I had never seen fluff before. And for those of you
Uh-huh.
who don't know, fluff is like a spread made out of marshmallows,
Okay.
marshmallow spread.
Uh-huh.
And I said to my friends, I'm like looking at it, I'm like, is that a dessert topping? They're like, what? No, you put it with peanut butter on bread. I'm like,
Love.
for a meal? Like, this is not dessert. This is like what you eat for your regular nutritious meal. And of course my friends are just like, whatever. But you gotta know it does
Gotta try.
taste good.
Hey,
And but you only need a couple of those before you start this
start
downhill trend.
correct.
So anyway, I would fluctuate between appreciating the local cuisine
Mhm.
and doing what I knew was right for me, and actually what made me feel better too.
Gotcha.
So, I would be down doing my homework in the lower part of our dorm, which had an couple exercise bikes. Nobody would
Mhm.
go down there. The only people would go down there is to do their laundry. But I was the one person on the exercise bike doing my, trying to get back on track. So
Gotcha.
what about
So
you? I mean, I've seen pictures of you too. Like you've made transformations over the years.
so growing up, my dad, they lived, and so it was subsistence farming, right?
Mhm.
Um, they grew their own food pretty much up where the homestead is Crozaville, Liberia,
Hmm.
and it was yucca, or we call it cassava. They had potato greens, where you have the sweet potatoes from. They had the palm nuts, the palm where you
Mhm.
get palm oil. They they had a grandfather had a gin, a mill, that made molasses, but first it came to cane juice, moonshine, and if you continue to process it, it turns to molasses. So they had all of these things that they lived off, and they moved to the city, and but dad kept the same the tradition where we had a garden in the yard, and it was cassava and yams, etc. And my granddad, I remembered, and I'm answering this question. My granddad, I would remember he would put the cassava, the edos, and these are all roots, tubers,
Mhm.
and he would
Mhm.
boil it. And when he takes it out, he wouldn't waste the water. He would drink it because it had the nutrients in there. And I saw it. I'm like, okay, I'll drink it. So we kept drinking that, and they lived till 80, 85. My uncle is about 89, 90 now. My dad is 83, 84, and they are still going strong. And I believe it's that diet, right?
Yeah.
It's that organic diet, and I mean real organic diet. So it's what transformed here, but that, it's a good genes,
Yeah.
plus exercising. So it was basketball then, and I think it's muscle memory. So I'm going to the gym now every day, just accept, not every day, almost every day, and just continuing to do it. And just as you said, it's not only the body, it's the mind also. I think it's the mind first more than the body, where you see it in your mind's eyes, and you carry on. Because I think, as you said, gratitude, we can have all these excellent ideas, all these dreams, but those dreams will stay in our minds if our bodies aren't healthy for us to execute, right? So it's a give and go, yin yang, as you would pronounce it,
Look at you. Yin
thing.
yang.
So that's how I take care of the body. It's interesting.
What I hear is we both were very fortunate to start with a good, foundation. And I think and I'm often grateful for that. I mean, I find myself, I said
Mm,
something to my dad the other day when I was talking about home, and he thought I was referring to North Carolina. And I said, it's funny because anytime I say the word home, I always refer to Colorado,
wow.
and I still do. And I'm so proud to be from there. I mean, it's an amazing
Yes.
place. Even now, it's so different than when I was growing up, but it is a state. I mean, still the health is apparently the healthiest state in the US
Hmm.
of A.
Yes.
The lowest amount of or lowest rate of obesity and various other things. And so they do a lot of things right there. But I think that we that's where we start, right? That's our home. And so
Right.
when we start from this foundation of cassava,
Mm,
so that's you must find that really interesting now because cassava root is in everything. It's the alternative flour or go-to tuber now
mm,
for keto diets and all sorts of things, and from if you look at the profile, the food profile,
mhm.
this is me geeking out on my,
Hey, do it, do it.
past um, holistic health coach stuff. But yeah, that tuber, I mean, the profile that it
Mhm.
offers, I mean, that is like the perfect diet. So if you look at, which by the way, if people don't know, sweet potato greens are delicious.
Ooh,
They're and did you ever make chips out of them?
ooh, yes, yes,
And people, when I first discovered that, where you
yes.
clip the leaf and then you salt and pepper it and oil it a little bit and you stick it in the oven for like 20 minutes and it
Uh,
becomes this crispy chip.
sis, so to feed that to the goats, right? The cassava leaf, right? They
Hmm.
feed that to the goats, but we also eat it. And that thing makes a mean dish. Ooh, it makes a mean dish. The potato greens and the potato, talk about iron. If you're sick and you go and take that, forget it. You're done. You're up and moving about. It's just so I go to the food store when I go to the food store, so Food Lion or so, right? And I see the cassava and the plantains, etc. And I get it, and people are like, what is that? I'm like, oh, you're missing something in your life. You just don't know.
It's so true, and it's so substantial. We don't need meat and potatoes, we don't need all that protein. As much as people think it's protein, 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 protein. Well, some of the strongest mammals on Earth are vegetarian,
Mm.
right? So let's think about that meat protein story we've been told. I'm not saying don't eat meat. I love meat. I mean,
Oh.
I'll eat meat. So I'm the last person. I'm not on this platform to be like, don't eat meat, but we don't have to have it. We
Mm-mm.
don't. We absolutely don't. I mean, the profiles of foods when we learn to couple them well, and I think that's where places on earth
Mm.
like where you were fortunate enough to be raised,
Yeah.
because of the way farming is, and you use what you can, you learn to
Mhm.
put together those profiles. It's like some cultures where it's rice and beans, right? Like there's
Oh,
certain
yeah.
things that when they work together, they give us that amount of nutrition, holistic nutrition that covers
Yeah.
our needs, and you add certain greens there to that. So I think the amount of food that we eat, and I know that I was talking to a client. He says, it's always making the best of where we're at, right? And so with this
Mhm.
whole quarantine COVID experience, and everybody's doing different things for the holidays and not with the
The
family the way they
family.
might have been before. He says, I'm kind of looking forward to it because I don't really like eating all that food all the time. He's like, you do it because it's there and it's good. And he says, but to be able to be choiceful in what I feed myself, he's like, I
Yes.
kind of like that I don't have to, I can just do that. I
Mm.
don't. And,
Mm.
the other thing that we talked about is a lot of
Mm.
people with flu, and obviously with COVID, being in that virus family,
Mhm.
immunity is really big right now. And one of the things I used to always say when I would talk to clients in holistic health is that, everybody says the cold and flu season, right, is the winter time. And it really has less to do with the season and more to do with what our body is doing during this time and what we're doing to it. So our
Mm.
body is naturally going into more of a hibernative, just made
Okay.
up a word, this
Hey.
place of hibernation and slowing down metabolism wise.
Mhm.
And so our liver isn't working the same way as it does in the spring or in the summer. And so when we then have the holidays, think about what winter is comprised of as far as traditional, eating is concerned.
Mm.
We eat, we drink, we consume all these extra calories
Yeah.
and alcohol and sugar and all this stuff. And our bodies naturally slow down at this time. So we're not pumping this through
Correct.
as well. And so it's building up in our system and causing this toxic, buildup, and residue. Why do you think we're getting sick?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? So cold and flu season isn't because it's cold and, and even the upsurge of COVID. It's really has more to do with what our body's naturally doing at that time and what we're doing to it.
Mhm.
So, with this time where we've had to kind of readjust and do things differently, it's actually allowing us to realign. I think 2020 has been a huge realignment year in every aspect, whether we want to look at it that way or not,
Correct.
that has allowed us to really stop and consider what we're doing and how we're doing it and whether that's truly
Mm.
serving us or not,
Mm.
even down to this piece. And so you want good immunity. It's about lightening the load, right,
Correct.
that your body has to deal with. And so you see some people who come from cultures where there's less food, and we
Mhm.
think of that as a scarcity issue.
Mhm.
And yes, when there's not enough food, yeah, there is legitimately a scarcity
Correct.
issue.
It is.
But just because what is eaten there, seems more trim, when it comes to
Mhm.
choice and quantity,
Mhm.
doesn't necessarily equate to good health or lack thereof.
Correct.
In fact, we're one of the most here in the States, one of the most unhealthy nations
Correct.
out there. And we have,
Mm.
more food than most other nations have too. So it's something
Mhm.
to look at.
Yeah, as you were speaking, Walter goes, as my grandma always called me and said, "Merry Christmas, Eve's Eve, rather." Merry Christmas, Walter. Thank you
Merry
for
Christmas,
coming in
Walter.
and jumping in here for a second or two. Yeah, so where we are, we're talking about gratitude, and then we went to how do you take care of yourself, and it transformed into a previous stronghold of Tracy's strong points of holistic health coaching in the past, right? Um, and that's where we are. But it seems as though we're talking about home, 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 home today, right? I I went to Liberia 8 years ago. I mean, I went there 2018 also, but I got pictures on Facebook, a reminder that came for Christmas because I took the
Mm.
family 2012. And strangely, that we will come and talk about home and talk about, love you too, Walter, come and talk about home and food and family. Those pictures came up, and there's one with I'm standing talking, and in the background, my uncle, who's about 90 years old, he's in the background, and he has this 5-gallon can. And this 5-gallon can container has, I've tasted it before. It has one of the sweetest drinks, natural drinks you can ever. It's called palm wine. Now, the way to make palm wine is you cut the palm tree, right? The palm tree, and I think that goes, I'm butchering this. Oof, somebody help me here, but I think, and I will stand corrected with all my Liberian folks out there. They will come,
They're all going to be in the
Walwyn,
comment.
you lying, man, you lying. But anyway, you climb the palm tree, you go in there, and then you do something up there, and then they cut the tree, and the tree has sap in it, and that sap, the fresh sap, when it comes in, to put a container there, and that thing just drips in there overnight or during the day. But the first drippings, it's so sweet, but be careful. You can get drunk from it.
Wait, it's naturally fermented in the tree?
I think so. I think so. Or they do some process with it. See, this where, see, at least, you see, yes, at least I'm showing my ignorance on drinking that or making it my proof. But I
It's
see the
like, yeah, no,
picture.
I don't have a still in my backyard, folks.
So I know. So I see the picture of my uncle with it like that, and the story, it conjures up the story where we're sitting there, the same moment after that picture is taken. I'm sitting there and say, "Walwyn, man, take a sip." I'm like, "Man, I ain't taking no sip. I'm drinking no wine here." "Walwyn, man, take a sip." I'm like, I said, the only way I'm gonna take that is if a priest comes and he prays over it and gives me communion. That's the only time I'm taking that. You laugh. Guess what? So my dad, my uncles, we're just the entire family's there. This guy comes in his car. "Hey, Walwyn, how are you?" Like, "Hey." So my dad goes, "Aren't you a priest?" He says, "Yeah, Mr. Port." He says, "Can you pray over this wine, please?" The guy goes, "Oh, sure. Let me bless it." I bless this wine. My dad looks at me, takes a cup, pours it in the cup, and say, "Hey, dude, it's been prayed." Oh, I'm like, "Oh man." So I go in. Oh my goodness, that was.
You are meant to try that wine, my
I was, I
friend.
was,
They were
I
not
was,
going to
I
let
was.
you.
So just those stories, man. What when you think about home, what's your what brings tears of joy? What comes to you that you go, "Oh my goodness, that."
I think we've talked about this a couple of times around
Uh-huh.
this household this season.
Gotcha.
I was talking to my daughter about, so my mother, interior designer extraordinaire. I mean, she's both interior and exterior. I mean,
Okay.
she has a green thumb and she can create. I mean, that's what that woman I think came here to do, is create beauty wherever she went, because
Wow.
exquisite beauty. I mean, to the point where we're just jaw dropping. I remember growing up, our house, people would walk by the neighborhood and they would just stop and gawk at the outside of the house and all of her gardens. I mean, it was
Mm,
something out of Home and Garden. I mean, it was just absolutely beautiful all the time. And you take that for granted. Like you wake up and grow up in that kind of environment, and that's
correct.
just life to you. And but she used to do, we had multiple trees in the house. We had one in the living room, the big tree in the living room
Mm-hmm.
that would go up the 2 stories, right? Because we had a space that was opened up, and
Gotcha.
it, so you could see the top of it, my parents' bedroom.
Okay.
It would go down. And then we had a kitchen tree. And then we had trees in our bedrooms, but the kitchen tree, she would make these cookies. And I actually was talking to my husband because he has a cooking channel, and I was like, "You should do some bake," because my daughter's like, "You should do some baking on your cooking channel." And she used to make these stained glass cookies. I mean, anybody who knows what I'm talking about, they're really
Mm,
cool. It's so she would take the big cookie cutters and she would make gingerbread dough, and
okay.
she would make big gingerbread, in different sizes cookies. And then you cut out parts of the inside of the cookie, or you can stamp it out too if you have other cookie cutters, if they're big enough and you have some smaller ones. And in those places, the holes basically
Uh-huh.
that you create inside the cookie, you take crushed up. At the time, it was Brock's hard candies, and
Okay.
they come in all the different, rainbow colors. And we would crush them all up individually, so we'd have the blue candies and the red candies and the yellow candies and all that. And you make stained glass, right? So you
Mhm.
put these crushed up candies in these places, and you stick it in the oven and bake the cookies, and
Oh,
then the
wow.
candies melt.
Nice.
And after they, you peel it off the aluminum foil, and you hang them up, and you have
Oh,
these
wow.
cookie ornaments. And we
Wow.
used to spend all this time, stringing popcorn and cranberries into strings, and we would string that around the tree in the kitchen, and then we would put these cookies on the tree.
Mhm.
And it was such a fun activity, but also too, I just remember some of the days as we got older and we had more skill.
Gotcha.
And we could do more with the cookies. Like, it's like, oh, look at this one. Oh, look at this one. Oh, look at how those colors got mixed together. And I didn't mean for that. And it came out this way. And so those holiday creations, I was thinking back on that. And then this weekend we were in Boone,
Correct.
and there's little ski hills there. I mean, compared to where I used to ski,
Uh,
it's like they're not
she
big, but
come
at the same
on.
time, yeah, totally. It's skiing, right? And we didn't ski, but we went up to the mountain just to see what it was like, and see what kind of amenities they had up there and everything. And
Right.
that really reminded me of home. I sent back a
Mm,
text to my dad. I said, just being on the mountain and in the mountains, I always thought, oh God, the beach is great. The beach is great, because I didn't grow up around the
correct.
beach. But
Correct.
now there's something about this year. I think it's maybe because we're not allowed to do what we normally do, or we're not allowed to
Mhm.
go home. We're not allowed. I mean, we're allowed, but we're told not to. That you really start to think about these things, and I think that's really good. I think it's good,
Yes.
to remember where we came from and remember what makes us, because this really is. It's so much a part of my DNA.
Mm.
I just don't think about that on the day to day.
Wow. Wow. You got me. So these stories is so important to tell these stories, right? Because all I, if I'm a visitor to that house, you know what I'll be doing, right? I'll be in the kitchen at that tree, just taking those ornaments.
Yeah, that's right. We
You're like,
bake them so you can eat them. Yeah.
I know. So I'll be like, hey, y'all be in the living room, I'm back here.
That was my brother, actually. He was like,
Oh,
where'd my
wow.
bell go with the colors? It was like, oops.
Yeah. Yeah, it's we come out here, we go to our various jobs, we perform, right? You're a speaker or you're a coach or you're an engineer. Just you go out there and people just see that part of you. And I think a few people in your office may even where you work may get to know you like that. But it's so important to know that, once I can see you as the not dirty hands, but the soiled hands, in the garden helping your mom. Can see you making those stained glass cookies. Can see you skiing, right? You can see me in Africa. Um, my dad telling me, "Hey, make those beds, make them straight, Walwyn, because we need to straighten about a foot high for the potatoes to grow under it. Till it properly, dig that hole." To know that who we are, the person that you see, the person I'm seeing here today, Tracy Phillips, the person you're seeing, a sum total of, like, I just met your mom.
Yeah.
I met your dad. You
Yeah.
you met my uncle. You met my dad, and it's so important to tell the story and connect to home, because I think home home is that, yes, beginning place, but is that place that we return and do our best work. When I
Mm.
say return and do our best work, if I can return to making those beds and my dad, and near my dad, Warwin, a place for everything and everything in its place. Things done by half are never done right. I'm returning to home when I'm engaging with someone at work. I'm returning to home and hearing my dad, hey, excellence is not perfection, but it's excellence. That carries me when we go to those fundamental phrases and things that we heard.
Yeah.
Is what makes Tracy say, Walwyn, man, I want to hang out with you. It's what makes Walwyn want to hang out with Tracy. Ah,
I
wow.
love that. I
That was
think
a
that's such a
beautiful.
beautiful message, Wolwen, because, when you say home, ultimately say coming home, coming home is coming home here, right? It's like when we can
Mm,
come home to ourselves, and all of that, all of those life experiences are part of us,
yeah.
right? They're within us. And so when we come home to those experiences, we're coming home to ourselves, right? And with
Mm,
all of and I think 2020 has been about that, is it's taken away things that have distracted us so
wow.
that we can get back home to ourselves. We can really get right with those things and how we're acting, how we're feeling. One of the things that I'm very clear now about is a message of being a mouthpiece for coming back together and learning how to be with one another again,
Mm, mm,
because everything from the slow drip of social media that's become this addictive quality, where, I mean, I even found it like when we got back to the hotel room this weekend, and you're just exhausted and you've been with each other all day and you've had fun, but it's
mhm.
just sometimes that intense amount of time together, you need like a few moments alone, and you're in this room together, right? So and we all, what did we all do? We all went to our devices.
Devices.
And so we don't even realize how much we're trained, and I will say addicted, to escaping into our devices, just to get away, instead
Mm,
of communicating that, hey, I need a moment, to step outside or to go
wow.
somewhere else or to whatever, that we use that as our escape. And so I think this, again, getting back to these places where we're not allowed to escape in as many ways as we had become accustomed, that it makes us have to look in the mirror. And I did a post last Friday on LinkedIn where I was really trying to start a conversation,
Mhm,
based on some I think startling and pretty, pretty like big stuff that we have going on in our culture around safetyism, and fragility, mental and emotional fragility, and how that
mhm.
leads to, physical fragility, where we
Gotcha.
don't think we're physically capable of handling certain things, but also this trend towards catastrophizing things, right?
Mhm,
Where things in past, past generations were seen as uncomfortable. Now we catastrophize it, and it's dangerous, and it's, we have to stick a trigger warning on it, and we have to, no, I
mm,
can't deal with that. Well, I'm not saying that we should just be calling each other names and using profanity, and making people feel small who are not like us and all of that. No, absolutely not. That needs to be dealt with. But how we're doing it is really what I wanted to bring to question. I mean, if we are just trying to cut it off at the knee and say nothing uncomfortable can happen here, then we're
mm.
not able to build resiliency. And as human beings, we need that. We need to
Wow.
become resilient through going through uncomfortable things. So I posted something about from a safetyism in this point of view of fragility,
Mhm,
from this book, Coddling the American Mind. And I invited people to share their thoughts. And it went the gamut. Everything from, I think you're spot on, to I don't agree with you.
mhm, mhm,
And what my whole point was, and what I mentioned was, this is what we need.
mm,
We've seen it in politics, right? The Republicans against the Democrats, and this fighting back and forth that's caused complete rifts in families, in organizations, in all sorts of things. And my point is that I think it's because we've gotten so distracted from being together and remembering how to communicate effectively and how to be honorable with one another and respectful and dignified and give
mm.
grace, and realize that, what, it is uncomfortable when we're talking to someone who holds a different opinion, and it is uncomfortable when they point that out to us. It's
Yeah.
very uncomfortable when somebody doesn't agree with you. Yes, it is, but it is not traumatic. And if you're triggered, it's something to learn and lean into.
Wow.
Because what I don't think people realize is this whole diversity and inclusion thing. Diversity isn't about color of skin, and it's not about, sexual preference, and it's about a difference in perspective. So people of a different color, people from different backgrounds, people from different, gender,
Mhm.
gender specificity, right? What you relate to, people from different religious backgrounds, they all have lived different experiences that give them different perspectives. It's the
Yeah,
perspectives that offer the diversity. Right.
correct.
So when we just we look at it from point of view of quota,
Oh,
we need a
mhm.
certain number of black men, a certain number of black women, a certain number of Indian men, a certain number of Indian women. You go all down the pike. Oh, as long as we have all those people, then we're diverse. It has nothing to do with those things.
Mm.
It has
Mm.
to do with what those people bring to the table from perspective point of view.
Mm.
And so, but when we cannot be comfortable with one another's perspectives, right? The most diverse companies and organizations are the most agile and the most innovative.
Correct.
They move to the times and beyond so much faster than those who don't have that diversity. And so we need it. We've seen that we need it, but we're also being conditioned and coddled away from it
Mm.
and being uncomfortable having these conversations and feeling like either we need to shut that other person down or completely walk away altogether instead of saying, this is uncomfortable. It's an
Wow.
uncomfortable conversation because I don't agree, but I'm actually celebrating the fact that I can be in this conversation and not agree because it's not about being right.
Mm.
It's about being in a room where we can offer our different perspectives and listen to one another because there's always something to learn. If we're just going about being right all the time and surrounding ourselves with people who agree with us constantly, where's their growth?
Correct. You know,
Right?
you talk about diversity, and I like the additional layer of perspective, right? Where they may be coming from is so the brown, the white, the blue, the yellow did not grow up in the same. So that's the easy way to pick it, right? So okay,
That's
brown,
right.
yellow, blue will pick you, even though they went to the same schools, etc. But
Yes. Same
it,
socioeconomic background, same,
correct.
but they're different colors. So they must,
But it must
that'll
be
offer diversity.
sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. But talking about diversity and the ability to the most agile companies that succeed, it I think about myself, I remember growing up in Africa, in Liberia. My dad's a plumber, and he had all his tools. There were other people who didn't have tools. Um, Dad didn't have when it would come to a particular cut of the PVC or the iron pipes. He would look and he would say, gosh, I need X, but I don't have X. But let me see what. And then he got creative. So when I see him getting creative, I go, wow, okay, he's putting two and two together. That thing that I saw my dad do, we're coming to diversity. Walwyn now sitting in America, where America, there's a tool for every single thing, right? There's a
Yes.
tool for everything. And when we are sitting somewhere, and it's not just a tool, a physical tool, but let's say a business tool, a thought process, a process to think things through, I can quickly sit and look and say, they don't have that. They don't have this. But we can put this and that together to make it work. Case in point, there's a crazy story, but I'm going to tell it. First house didn't have any tools, had a drill. Needed to install the satellite, DirecTV satellite. Didn't have to go high because we're right where the porch was. It was a townhouse. I could turn it and could get it, but I needed to put it maybe 2 feet. Only had a drill and a shovel. And I thought, I want to do it now. I'm not going to. So a Caucasian friend from work came by and he's sitting there with me. And I go, I need to take this 4x4 and put it to 2 feet or 3 feet. I don't want an entire four. He looks at me and says, well, let's cut it. I'm like, sure, we'll cut it. So how did I cut it? I took the drill and the drill bit, the 4x4. I went zzz, 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 zzz. And he's looking at me like, I turn it around. So if I did it at a 1/4 inch on one side, I went at an inch on the other because I'm trying to make it weak. So I went zzz, 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 zzz. Then I looked at it and I did another little turn it and did a diagonal. Zzz, zzz, same position. Zzz, zzz, zzz. And then he's looking and I put it at an angle and stepped right where I went out and broke it. He said, well, when you were trying to cut it, why didn't you just get a saw? Like, I don't have a saw, bro. I said, I had a drill. And the reason
And a brain.
Correct. The reason that's diversity. Imagine if we were somewhere and we didn't have a saw and we didn't need an exacto cut. We didn't need that fine cut, but we needed to cut this thing for us to live, to build something. Somebody who didn't have that diverse mind where dad was creative and they had a saw every time. They just think the saw is the only thing to cut. But that drill can weaken, and we can cut it. That's what makes agile companies, just what you said, the diversity. We can come together with my African mind. You can come with your American mind, the Canadian mind, all of these different minds, and we can create something that, oh my goodness, this is the best thing since sliced bread.
Absolutely. Well, I love that, and it is a complete celebration of perspective, right? When we're looking at it one way and it doesn't work, doesn't mean that's the only potential answer, right? And so that's the piece, is that it's sometimes our lens is only allowing us to see something one way, but someone else's lens is seeing it in a different way. And so the more different angles, perspectives we have available to us, the more opportunity we have to see solutions to things that if there was only one of us or two of us looking from two angles, we wouldn't have, as opposed to those groups that come from 15 different angles.
Correct.
Because quite frankly, I mean, my brother and I grew up in the same family. Okay, yes, one's male, one's female, and I'm 4 years older. But we each had such, not only are we different people, we think differently, we go about life differently, but we've had different life experiences.
Yes.
So, I mean, you see this in twins. A lot of times twins are polar opposites from one another, right? Personality wise.
Correct.
So each human being has a different perspective, because no one human being, even somebody, you could find your doppelganger, somebody walking down the street who looks just like you. Correct. That person did not have the same life experiences, right? Correct. So they are a different person. So that's the piece that, just if we look at the superficial and we call that diversity, or we call that, if we have a certain number of men, a certain number of women, we're going to have different perspectives. Not enough. Right? Yes, we will, because each human being has a different perspective, but it shouldn't be the superficial stuff that we're looking at trying to fill a quota on, right? It really should be that we are looking to create as many diverse perspective options within our company, organization, group, whatever, and that we're looking through that lens. Because I think, my daughter, I think she was in 4th or 5th grade when she came home at one point and she goes, "Mom, what's a black person?" Right? 4th or 5th grade. And she goes, "Is that a person who has darker skin?" And I said, "Well, we had this long conversation about what one calls oneself." Right? So some people, said person of color. Other people prefer the black term. But yes, it indicates the color of the skin. And she says, "Why does that matter?" We have generations of children growing up with no ability to that doesn't matter. And I think that for centuries that has mattered, and that's mattered in ways, unfortunately, correct, that have put certain groups at a disadvantage over others. And yet with the new generations coming in, if we keep banging that same drum, of we're looking at the color of one's skin, or, the religious propensity, or the sexual propensity or the political propensity or whatever, even the intellectual propensity, right? We're cutting ourselves off the knee at the knee because, it's only when, like my daughter says, I don't care if it's male or female. I don't care. Like when her good friend recently decided she wants to identify as a boy,
Mhm.
and when Madison didn't blink an eye, she was just like, yeah, that makes sense.
Mm.
It's just, it doesn't matter. I still care about this human
This
being,
person.
this person, and
Person.
this person adds value to my life. Their
Mhm.
perspective helps me grow because they see things differently. I don't care what they call themselves.
Mm.
I love the person and I see the value in the person. And I think that's when we can get to that point, but it means we have to start getting comfortable with our discomfort of being in a room with people who have different opinions and have different ways of looking at things and all of that. So I think that we can't put the cart before the horse.
Yeah.
I really find that a huge proportion of, I mean, I was so appreciative of the people who weighed in, especially the people who said, I don't really see
Agree.
things the way you're
Correct.
seeing them,
Correct.
because they didn't leave the table. You saw a lot of other people liking their comments, but not adding. And that's okay. I'm not trying to judge people for not commentating. But we do get to think about that. Why?
Mhm.
Why are we afraid to step out? Well, partially because like I would never do something like that on Facebook, is it's the Wild West there. Shoot and then ask for forgiveness after.
Mm.
I think that we've gone so far in the direction of I just have to immediately shoot down what makes me uncomfortable and then ask if maybe that wasn't the right thing,
Mm.
that we're
Wow.
really, and we've been separated physically from one another with the quarantine. And so where are we going to start learning how to be with one another again? We have to be conscious about it. We have to be intentional about it. We have to be thoughtful and we have to be gracious.
Mm.
And we have to pull all of our bootstraps up because it is going to be tough on our egos. When one person is just putting out there, like, I did this and I don't care what anyone else thinks, and they're doing it almost as a reactive, in your face kind of
Mm.
commentary, to be able to turn around in that face of that kind of way of being and say, hey, I'm glad you feel good about that.
Mm.
I'm happy for you, and
Mm.
mean it.
Yeah.
Right? This is what I want to see us start to lean more into, is practicing where it's difficult, not where it's easy. Yes, I think to make our mark, there has to be a certain amount of support around us. But at the same, so don't just throw yourself in the lion den without any back door.
Correct.
But at the same time, just like I said, I would have not posted what I put on LinkedIn on Facebook because people just aren't as gracious and well, um, their behavior isn't the same as it is on LinkedIn. Let's put it that way. But at the same time, I don't want to stop having these conversations. I don't want to stop inviting people to the table and say, you know what, legitimately, your voice matters to me. And actually, probably if it totally is against what I'm saying, it probably matters more, because legitimately, don't just come
Mm.
to the table trying to fight me just for the sake of it. But because you obviously have something for me to hear, because if I don't see your perspective, that means I'm not looking at it. And
Mm.
maybe you have something to share that will offer me something that could really be beneficial to my viewpoint. And I
Mm.
want that. That's what I'm not welcoming in, the opportunity just to be, oh, we love you. Yes, say more, say
Right.
more. I mean, that's easy. We could all step up and say whatever comes out of our mouths. And if everybody's like, oh, and I'm not saying that's a bad thing, it's a good thing. But if that's all we live in, we don't learn. And there is such a gap I see in the world, and in our country, especially in our ability to be with one another and be different, be
Mm.
diverse, even though we're craving diversity. It's such an irony.
Yeah.
Everything is about diversity and inclusion, and the way we're acting goes completely against it.
Yeah. It's, what really caught me was your daughter's reaction to her buddy, who said, I want to be this or that, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's it's so important. I'm learning that, and I knew this before, but I'm seeing it. It keeps coming every single day to me in different forms. It's the third part of the story, which is truly the real part of the story, right? So
Yep.
my part, your part, and then there's that third dimension that's supposed to be the place that we settle it. And it came to me in a movie the other day. I'm watching this movie, and the guy, so it was a Italian movie. His son got beaten by a group of guys, his friends. Say the movie's an hour and 30 minutes, an hour and 25 minutes. The movie played me, and I am against the guys who beat the doctor's son. I'm like, I hate them. I hate them. At the 129th minute, 1 hour and 29th minute, they bring in a part that's the son had raped his ex-girlfriend and had
Mm.
recorded it and had spread it around. And the guys who beat him was the new boyfriend who was angry.
Mm.
So at that moment, I am, I can stand him. I can stand him. And it just
Yeah.
it just
Wow.
told me it told me just how your daughter reaction is to this person. There's a third part of the story that sometimes we don't even hear the second. We just only hear our part of the story. That she wants to change. She wants to, until we can listen to the second part and decide and look for that third part. I'm finding I'm not going to do knee jerks when someone brings in their story and I go, oh, wow. I will empathize. I will, I may sympathize, but then I go, okay, where's the other person to hear their part of the story? I say, and
Mhm.
somewhere in the middle of those two, there's a third part, which is really the real part. So I'm not going to take sides here. And
Mm.
I'm finding it helps me in what you just said, letting perspectives come to the table so that people can say what they want to say. Because had I been born maybe 200 miles away from where I was, I would have been a Muslim. Had I
Mm.
been born for 500 miles or 1,000, 2,000 miles away, I would have been Buddhist, Hindu.
Mm.
So
Wow.
in
That's
my,
what you just said is pretty powerful.
yeah, in my conversations with those people, and when I say those people, with me and whomever, I really need to be cognizant and I need to be so gracious that even though I say Jesus Christ is the only way, he said, I am the way, the truth, and the light. No one can come to me. But who am I to say you did it wrong? It's just because they were born there. And I would have been born there and I would be the same person looking at you. So I'm going to be gracious to you. And as we have this conversation, I say, okay, man, I hear you. I hear you.
Mm.
I, I'm I'm going to be gracious to you. You're a woman, and you're talking about abortion, and and someone on the, I'm not saying that's that's not my viewpoint because I want you to do what I can't make a decision for you. I'm sorry.
Right. That's the end of the that's the
Yes, I can't
story.
make a decision for nobody. I can make it for myself, and even for myself, Tracy. Oh Tracy, this part, and I'm gonna end on this so you can give your last words. Even remove the person who's telling you the story, take that away. I'm going to go inward. And there are three parts to my own story. I'm telling myself that I'm this. Okay, hold up, Walwyn. Are you really? What's the second part? And then there's that third part that I really have to 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 accept who I am, accept my my thought process, and look at that naked truth and go, whew,
Mhm.
oh my goodness, I can't even stand myself. And how can I go and
Mm.
stand somebody?
I love that. And you know what that third option is? That third option is appreciating and accepting both sides.
Mm, Yeah.
right? So you see the one side story and the other side story, and the third option is saying you're both,
Mm, mm,
right? You're both, you're all of that. You're all these things, you're all these stories, right? They're probably more than three. You know,
correct.
you're all these stories that you've been telling yourself. I just was talking about a story just the other day. I met a woman who I just saw on LinkedIn, and there was just this immediate, like, I need to connect her with so and so.
Mhm.
And we talked for the first time on the phone yesterday, and we got into all sorts of things. I loved her immediately because she just went deep the way I do. And I said, yeah, I've been telling myself a story for years that, I grew up in an affluent background, and that, part of what I feel, has kept me from going big the way
Mm,
I feel like I'm supposed to
okay.
is because I, a lot of people, there were a lot of power plays going on in those affluent, environments that I was in. And my father was never around because he was always working. So I told myself the story, if I become big, I'll never be there for the people I love and who love me.
Mm,
And I'm going to be too concerned with power plays. And I don't want to be that person. I'm not that person. And because I told that story, it's like, well, then I can't do that because I can't become that because that's not who I am.
correct.
And she said, she goes, wow, that's a story you've been telling. I was like, apparently so, because until I just said it, I didn't realize I was telling that story. Right. So sometimes the story comes out. I was like, yeah, I've been telling myself the story. It's like, that was the first time I actually said that out loud.
Correct.
But I think that that's it, is owning that it's like, I can see with compassion why I was always holding myself back,
Mm,
because I didn't, and we all hear that, I don't want to be the jerk. I don't want to, but it's true. And when we make nice with those stories, like, I can totally see how I didn't want to be the arrogant jerk in the room, or I didn't want to look like I
mm,
had it all. And I didn't want to look like I was better than other people. And I didn't want
mhm.
to. So I just shied away from a lot of those things. And yet, shying away from who I am has kept me small. And that's not helping the world. So
No.
we get to that third option, gets to say, hey, how are you two going to come together and make nice? How are your little stories going to come together and go, you had an opinion and a perspective, and from that perspective that was true,
Yeah,
and over here you had an opinion and perspective, and from that opinion and perspective that was true.
correct.
How can we make it all true, so it's not about one side or the other being right or
Mm,
taking over?
mm,
It's about, at any point in our lives, we had all these perspectives going for
mm,
various reasons. And now we can just kind of honor and own that and say, what perspective do I want to work from now?
mm, mm,
Right.
mm.
Because all of this playing back and forth and saying, I've seen plenty of people say, well, I can't agree with that because I'm a Democrat or I'm a Republican. And that would mean that
Mm.
I
Yeah,
mean, if your party is keeping you, if your story about your party is keeping you in place around something that is
mm,
fundamentally core to you, that gets to get looked at.
correct. Core
Right?
to you.
Because otherwise, where it's going to cause a problem is not just in the outside. It's going to rift in here. When you try to come home to yourself, it's not going to be a very homey environment.
Mm, mm.
So I think we call this coming home.
Yes, yes, that's it. That's it.
Everything we talked about today had some sort of reference
To
to
whom?
this concept of coming home.
Wow. Tracy, you and it's exactly we look through those home lens to make our decisions. And it's, as you said, I'm not going to reiterate. I'm just going to say, Tracy, we were supposed to do 26 shows this year. We did 20 because we didn't meet in January, or else we would have done 26. We met in April. But my gratitude is, oh my goodness, to see that not a mistake, hey, let's try it, has turned into a platform that we we're producers. We're not consumers. And I want to be a producer, to continue being a producer. Thank you for letting us jump on this ride, and see where this experiment is gonna go. So you have a merry Christmas and a prosperous new year. May your family be blessed. May your new teenager, I think, just have, conquer the world and just do what she wants to do, with her head on her shoulders, better than mom and dad.
Mm-hmm. Well, and those blessings are so real, and right back at you, my friend, and all of you out there. I mean, we're producing for you. Living and growing in this space is humbling and incredibly rewarding at the same time. And so I just really thank, all of you as well for being here with us, because, we hope that you'll continue the journey with us. We're going to do this journey regardless, right, Roland?
Hey,
This journey is like, even it comes down to just the two of us, which it was originally, right?
we'll keep on rocking it.
We'll keep rocking it.
Well, have a Merry Christmas, y'all, and see y'all in 2 weeks.
Merry
Tracy,
Christmas. Happy
take
New
care.
Year.
Same to you,
Bye.
sis. Bye bye.